We love you!
Hello and welcome to Tribe Talk, the Galway Hurling Podcast, with me, Patrick Earley and David Connors, where each week we'll discuss and divulge all the goings-on in Galway hurling. We'll be taking an in-depth look at the club scene and of course focusing on inter-county, in this, Shane O'Neill's first year at the helm, all of which we'll do in the company of some special guests and former Galway greats. So do come along and join us on Tribe Talk, Galway's dedicated hurling podcast.
Well, we've reached what probably will turn out to be the season finale of Club Talk here on Tribe Talk. Myself and David here. To, I suppose, quick review of the year, David. And first, I suppose the main focus of today is we're going to picking our team of the year. Lots of issues and debate over the last couple of days in coming to a final 15. We said we wouldn't leave it till the actual show start debating because we could be here all night. But we've settled on at 15, and I don't think it's possible, I suppose, for either side to get everybody they wanted in the team. But in fairness, we did agree on 5% of the team, yourself, myself, and Chunky, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that tell us we're wrong anyway. You know, so yeah, feel free to leave the comments towards Patrick there. He's on Twitter. You can get him there, no bother. So, any criticisms or anything like that. Just before we start, Patrick, I'd just like to say that Jesus, do you know when I knew when Thomas's would beat Thurlock last week was when you tipped Thurlock. I was never as sure as what was it Len was saying to me during the week. It was like Joe and Clare was the curse of Biddy Earley, in Galway now we have the curse of Patrick Earley. So,
I had a secret agenda there, doing the South Galway neighbours a favour, you know.
Yeah. We'll say no more.
Absolutely. Well, on that, I suppose I wasn't at the county final. I was away for the weekend, but really enjoyed the game, watching the stream anyway. You know, and I know you did the review show last week, but cracking final, to be fair, Dave. We haven't really discussed much about it since I was back, but great final and good winners in the end. And I suppose Thurlock, disappointment for them, but offer a lot of hope that that their day will come in the next couple of years. You know.
Yeah, you've summed up there again. We probably won't rehash it too much, but yeah, it's just Thomas's again probably showed their class. Thurlock are very close, so maybe if Dahi was 100%, maybe that he could have been a player that could have swung the tide towards their favour. Very, very close, but Thomas has again managed to just get over the line, and I suppose they have their place in history now, so nobody can kind of take that away from them, and it's up to everyone else now to catch them next year. But the chasing pack, as we've seen with Cappy and a few more and Mellows over maybe the last couple of years, there's not a whole lot of pile between these two, between all these teams. Like, so, they'll be all guns blazing next year, and you could be looking at any amount of. You could be probably picking between maybe 5 or 6 teams that could potentially win it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose when it comes to picking team of the year, your selections, I suppose, on most people's teams are probably going to be reflected in that Thomas's and Thurlock are going to dominate a lot of teams because. Make no comments about it. They were the two standout teams of the year, So I suppose it shows in the final team we selected, and as well as that in the nominations we came up with. Initially, I came up with the 45 nominations, so I had 3 selected for each position, and I sent it into the WhatsApp group with Chunky and David, hoping they might give me a couple of names here and there that we could swap in and out. But a list started to form as. Within minutes of me posting the list, my own list of nominations. So we've decided to expand the list of nominations drastically because there were simply too many lads being thrown at me. So we've ended up with 65 nominations in all for the Tribe Talk Team of the Year. A bit of a mix. We've 4 goalkeepers nominated, 12 for the full back line, 14 for the half back line, 10 for midfield, 13 in the half forward line, and 12 in the full forward line. So a day later, Chunky was still throwing a couple of names at me, and I told him that was the end of it. Now I was sick of listening to him. But in terms of the actual team, we all submitted our 15, David, and we were bar 1 or 2 positions. It was fairly unanimous in a lot of places. Which an awful lot of good performances this year, but there were 10 or 12 standout performers really in a lot of positions.
For sure, you go through the lines, and there's probably lads that are certain locks. You know what I mean, in kind of every line of the field that you're I won't give them away yet, but lads that were really just a cut above the rest, really. Like, that we have a lot of nominations there, and there's probably even, as you said there, a few more lads probably deserve a mention as well. But you were running a tight ship, as we say, and myself and Chucky were firmly put back in our box when we were approaching maybe 100 or 200 was
yeah.
Yeah. But it just goes to show the standard in Galway, club hurling over the last year. Like, there was some lads that didn't even make it here. Be any other year they'd be probably within with a real shout. But it was just we probably a standard of championship maybe that we maybe hadn't reached over the last few years, and it's probably reflected in that. Like, there was some outstanding individual performances, and it's tough to even narrow it down to 65 nominations and then to 15 in a team, but we got there in the end. But I by and large, like you said, I think 80 to 90% we were probably in agreement. There was maybe one or two positions where they were up for grabs, and we fought it out as best we could.
For sure. So I suppose with that, we'll just kind of give an outline of how we're going to go through the team. We have we'll go through it line by line as they often do on the Sunday game team of the year. So we'll start with our goalkeeper, give our selection, and run through the nominations and why we made our selection, and move on in that regard. And also just to say that with all the nominations that were coming in, we decided what we go with as well. We'd do a Senior B team of the year as well, because an awful lot of quality performers in Senior B, but their teams probably didn't get the run in the championship to that would justify their selection in the overall team of the year. The likes of, I suppose, Clonmerdale, Haskell in reaching the quarter final, they gave themselves, it's definitely given their players a chance of making the final cut. But we'll discuss our Senior B team of the year towards the end of the show. But we'll crack on with the overall Tribe Talk team of the year first, and starting off with goalkeeper. 4 nominations here, 3 from Senior A, 1 from Senior B. Nominations are Éanna Murphy from Tommy Larkins, Gerald Kelly from St. Thomas's, Kieran Dolan from Sarsfields, and Stephen Dibney from Baha. David, our final selection, we'll let you reveal there.
We went with Kieran Dolan from Sarsfields in the end. It was a strange kind of year for goalkeepers. Like other years, there would have been we're kind of wrecking our brains, but I think he was, like we said, probably a cut above anyone else. I think we're just going through his record there. Like, I think he didn't concede a goal until the 2 against Turlock in the knockout stages, and clean sheets in the group stages. Three tough enough games. Like, you came up against, you came up against your Castlegar and you came up against your Thomases there, and he didn't concede. He made a few vital saves as well. It wasn't like that they were, there was huge protection in front of him or anything like that. He had to come up with some big saves when he's needed. I know Eamon Cleary outlined that last week on the show here, and it was something we've been firmly agree with. And just overall, he was just very impressive performer, in goals throughout the year. His puckouts were good. Very little you could fault him on, really. I think it was something that we both agreed with, Patrick, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, because like the thing is, most often when you're looking towards the team of the year, you look towards the knockout stages, because that's where most of the crunch hurling is, like, really, And when you go back as far as the quarterfinals, there's been hardly any top drawer on one say has been made, and this not even fault of goalkeeper. It's just the way a lot of games have gone. You think of James Cahill's save against Asker in the last couple of minutes. That's probably the save that probably stands out in my mind from the knockout stages. But Dolan was very consistent throughout. He's never present at that Sarsfields team for an awful long time, and more than just a shot stopper to them. You think of the likes of the Kieran Callan, these guys that just the boss of game from back there. And he's certainly the presence for Sarsfields as well. And then shot stopping this year as well. Obviously a critical component of any goalkeeper's game, and he was outstanding in that regard against Ardrahan as well in the preliminary quarter final. Made a couple of right good saves that day. So, took a bit of thinking about it, right? Because thinking of the final 4, there wasn't really a standout selection that we would have made, but I think we've definitely come to the right call in my mind. And Kieran and so I suppose that's where we finished off. So we'll start off with Kieran Dolan in goals. Full back line, we'll give the list of nominations. So nominations are Johnny Cohn from Knockray, Cathal Ryan from Castlegar, Declan Cronin, Capitagal, Michael Morris and Ronan Burke, both from Turlockmore, Hinton Burke, St. Thomas's, David Collins, Lee Meadows, Darren Morrissey, Sarsfields, Stephen Barrett, Lee Meadows, Declan Connolly, Clonmerdale, Robbie Land, Ballinderreen, and Stephen Kelly, Ahaska. And our final three then in right cornerback, we selected Declan Croner from Captagal, fullback Fintan Burke, St Thomas's, and left cornerback Stephen Barrett, Liam Meadows. So that's our three in the fullback line, David. Not an easy one by any means, because Johnny Cohen, Cathal Ryan, Michael Morris, they're three lads really unlucky probably to miss out. It's hard to argue with that fullback line, but that would put the fear of God to a lot of corner forwards and full forwards around the county.
Jesus, yeah, you wouldn't like to be going. There's no corner forward or full forward in the county that would like to be going in on top of them three lads. But yeah, there's plenty of lads there that we're very unlucky to miss out. We'll say. I know Chunky was pushing hard for Cathal Ryan for his inclusion with Cassigar. He's a huge fan of his, so he can kind of deem himself a bit unlucky. Michael Morris would be another one. 2 outstanding years back to back. Stephen Kelly was one there maybe as well. He was absolutely massive for a Hascafona all championship, and his move switch out to going out and Davy Glynn and out to wing back there was one of the key changes to them over the year, and it kind of made David Collins from Lee Mill, as we know what he brings now. He's so assured and solid back there. There's plenty of other ones, like Robbie Lane was excellent, and Conor Whelan is probably one of the best jobs I've seen all year on him. I think Whelan sniped 3 points in play, in fairness, but if you can hold him to that, you're doing fairly well.
Sure.
Darren Morrissey, Declan Connolly, excellent performance. But just on the lads that made it, I suppose Declan Cronin first. Jesus, I think he was on the Galway Bay Team of the Year last year. I think we the hand in the second that, and he's just ultra consistent. He's probably the most consistent cornerback in the county over the last few years. Distribution is good. He's a good man marker. You very rarely see him bother, no matter who comes in on top of him. I suppose it's probably he's arguably maybe the most consistent player defensively maybe in Galway over the last 2 years. Yeah. He was probably nailed on between the whole lot of us there. I don't think any of us would disagree. Moving on then maybe to Fintan Burke. He'd probably be arguably, maybe if we were doing a player of the year, I don't think we discussed it, but he probably would be my player of the year in Galway this year if I was to pick it. Made a huge difference to Thomas's when he back there. They were at sea maybe in the first game against Castlegar, but when he went back, he just absolutely shored it up. He's a monster under the high ball. He's good. He's good when he comes in low. He get a block, a hook, tackle. Yeah, he's capable of winning his own free, as we've kind of gone through before. Every challenger that presented themselves, he seemed to match it, and he was absolutely outstanding. And is it any wonder he'd be probably one of the lads that'd be linked that could, if Dahi is missing maybe the first round of the Leinster Championship. I don't know what his fitness is like at the moment. I haven't heard, but he could be possible there. And then on to Stephen Barrett, this was probably. We had we toed and froed on this, but this was one that probably you were very strong on here in terms of Stephen. You really felt he did a good year. He's probably Mellow's go-to man marker. He has been for the last while. Louis McQueen is a huge fan of his, clearly. I just kind of he's kind of one of these pests of quarterbacks. He'll never give you an inch, you know what I mean. He can match in high ball, low ball, anything like that. It's no surprise really. I suppose Shane O'Neill is he's drafted him in for bit of training there in the last few weeks, and he'd be probably the step up from now. He's showing how good he is in the club scene. Can he maybe grab a Galway jersey, maybe even if it's not for this year, maybe from the Walsh Cup next year, maybe break into the league, and you'd never know from there. But yeah, I think very, very strong team, very, very, very strong full back line, should I say. A lot of lads maybe unlucky, probably didn't touch Johnny Cohen there as well. He's he was probably a position there that was Loughrea were trying to fill. He had to go back there, and he was really dominant when he was back there. And it was absolutely massive in Loughrea's drive to get into the semi-finals this year. But yeah, I don't think too much could be said about the lads that are there. I think they're all fairly justified at their spots.
No, probably not. And you look at the likes of Declan Cronin, who, as we know, has been so consistent, obviously in that position for Cap Tiger for the last 5-6 years, and Stephen Barrett as well, who's really the last year or two really developed into a top class defender in the county. But they're both fellas that would, from our perspective, would have Galway aspirations. But it's probably the way the year is. It's not going to be this year for them, because in fairness to Shane O'Neill and his background team, it's not going to be a championship campaign where there's going to be massive experimentation, because he's no league or anything to base it upon. He is a club championship, sure, but it's totally a different ballgame when you go into an inter-county setup. But the likes of those lads, if they're in there, Stephen Barrett's in there training with them, it's for next year. That's going to help him and bring him on, and then hopefully we have some sort of a normal league, so to speak, next season, where the likes of him and hopefully Cronin as well can get their opportunity, get a run of games at cornerback and see kind of sink or swim time. They're both of an age now, kind of 24-ish, on the 24 mark, where you're kind of, you are sort of starting to enter your prime, really, in that they're playing senior hurling for the last 4 or 5 years. They're firmly established there now, both physically in top class, Nick, and probably if they enter an inter-county setup, will get into even better, Nick. So whatever about you'd like to see them go on and represent Galway and bring their club form into it there, but I know certainly from a club perspective, having your players in training with the county, it is going to help your club as well when they do come back into the club setup. They'll be an even better animal than they already are heading in there. So no, I think Pinton probably fullback probably picked himself, to be fair, one of the easiest selections on the team. And I don't think anyone's going to argue with his selection there. It was an absolute colossus for Thomas's, and I suppose turned their season around is probably a wrong way of putting it, in that they did beat Castlegar first day out, but certainly had he not gone back there, I'm not so sure that they would have made it the whole way to a county final and won it the way they did last week. So yeah, I mean, an impressive and imposing full back line for sure. So with that, we'll switch out to the half back line. And our nominations here are Shane Cooney and David Sherry, both of St. Thomas's, Joseph Cooney of Sarsfields, Paul Hoban, Loughrea, Dara Dolan, Capitagle, Daniel Loftus and Jamie Holland from Turlockmore, Kevin McHugo of Tommy Larkins, Kevin Hussey also of Turlockmore, apologies, TJ Brennan, Clarenbridge, Greg Lally, Gort, Pierce McCran, Ardrahan, Sean Hardiman, Mullia, and Jack Fitzpatrick, Clanberdale. An awful lot of talent here. It's the line where we have the most nominations with 14, and even at that, there's a lot of talent that isn't listed. But in the end, the selections we came to were Daniel Loftus at right half back, centre back Shane Cooney, and left half back Kevin Hussey. So 3 players that were all involved in the county final the week before last. So 2 selections from Turlockmore, 1 from St. Thomas's, and again, a lot of Turlock's dominance this year was built on their half back line, and it's reflected here in our team of the year with 2 selections, David.
Yeah, for sure, and the 2 boys are fully deserving as well. Now, again, there's a good chunk of lads there that are unlucky to miss out. There's been some outstanding performances in the half back line all year. Just going through the list there, you had some of the lesser lads, not lesser lads, but lesser lads that didn't maybe go as far in the championship as they might have liked, say the likes of Kevin McHugo there and stuff like that, players like that, Pierce McCann, TJ Brennan as well, you know what I mean? He was, in a very disappointing year for Clarenbridge. He was probably their standout player. He probably adds a bit of physicality that maybe the rest of maybe a lot of the Clarenbridge lads maybe are lacking a small bit. So yeah, but just on our selections then, I suppose, looking in from the outside or looking in from our point of view, I think they'd nearly picked themselves all the same. They were probably a coat above the rest. It's Daniel Loftus. I thought he was absolutely outstanding all year. Again, distribution was good. He, even when he was called on to do a man marking job, I think Niall Burke went over on him at one point when they're playing Ormore Mary, and he no problem. Niall Burke didn't score from play, between himself and Jamie Holland. He's bulked up physically. He's come on leaps and bounds over the last while. It's a target for the short puck outs as well. So just tell you, that was the platform for so much of Turlock's play this year. That half back line, and they were so strong. You know what I mean? And Jamie Holland probably was in with a real shout. Other than say Shane Cooney had such a strong year there. Shane Cooney was a monster at centre back this year. It's no surprise that the spine, the Thomas's spine, is what makes it up, because them two were the glue that held the Thomas's defence together all year. A powerhouse, Shane Cooney, and he's deceptively quick as well. And sometimes when you think when he's bursting out with the ball, he is it on the hurl and there's 3 or 4 lads hanging off him, you think this is a certain turnover here. You're like, maybe let it go, Shane. You'd be saying but no, he somehow managed to get get that yard of space to deliver a pass or a hand pass and deliver it on. Huge player for Thomas's. He's still very young, but this is his 5th county title win. 5 county finals, 5 wins. It's fair going, and I think he's come on so much over the last few years, and he's fully warranted. then just moving on to Kevin Hussey, like, what an athlete, an athlete probably, you probably regard him more as an athlete really than an out and out hurler. Like, his hurling might not be as sharp as some of the other nominations in the list, but, he makes up of it with, his stamina, his pace, he's one of the best man markers in the county as well. He's probably maybe arguably Thurlock's best defender this year. Probably, like, and in Thurlock's strongest maybe section of the field. I know when I don't know who was over Galway, he gave him a run, like, and the boys were a huge fan of his. I think just what he brings physically, is colossal. Really good year. We'll probably get a bit of backlash. It's just so they're just running through the names there again. You've Joseph Cooney there, like, who's arguably the best six in the county. When he's just left there, misses out Sean Hardiman, Jack Fitzpatrick, David Cherry, Paul Hooban, Pierce McCran, another level we didn't mention, and even Greg Lally. Greg Lally himself, when Gart, I probably might touch on him later on, but when Gart are ticking, and when Gart are flying, it's normally him. He's currently leading the line. But yeah, I couldn't fault the selection myself either. I think it was a pretty unanimous decision between the three of us. I know Chunky's not here to say it. He might have had other ideas, but I think we're probably in firm agreement with the three selections, Patrick.
Yeah, I think Darragh Dolan's probably another fella very, very unlucky to miss out. I know he was in your initial selection, David, but I suppose not at the start of the year. It wouldn't have been recognised as a wing back, more maybe a midfielder or a wing forward, but has that ability and has the ball playing ability to go back and hurl wing back, and was a great outlet, and I suppose a great link man in many ways for Captagal when they were playing ball out of the full back line. He was always a good option and a safe option to give ball to, and that he's comfortable himself on the ball and will find space for himself, and more often than not deliver quality ball into the lads inside. And that was a big switch for Captagal this year, putting Darragh Dolan back there, and it's something that, like, we know, like, the likes of Paul Claffey has been away for years now, and it leaves a huge hole in your defence. But I think definitely him going back there this year helped them out big time. And he was really outstanding for them there. So definitely another fella unlucky to miss out. But no, look at you, a quality half back line there. Daniel Loftus is really promising player going forward. Much more physically imposing than his older brother Sean, and different players really, despite the similarities in appearance and helmets and so on. But definitely a fella going forward that you'd like to see thrown into a county panel and hopefully get a bit of game time in next year or two. Moving on to midfield, then, David, 10 nominations here for 2 positions, which is a bit mad, but even at that was a bit hard to cap it. So nominations here with James Regan and David Burke from St Thomas's, Ty Cairn, Liam Meadows, Dahi Burke, Turlockmore, Jason O'Gorman, Castlegar, Colin Flynn, Tommy Larkins, Cathal Mannion, Ascafona, Ross Albertini, Ardrahan, David Concannon, Clanberdaley, and Roy Land, Ballandarian. And we'll leave it to you to reveal the pair midfield duo, David.
Just two key Galway players, really. I'd probably be no surprise for a lot of people, but selections are Dahi Burke and Cathal Mannion. I suppose what more can you say about these two, really? I suppose we just examined their club form this year. Like, Dahi was a huge player in Thurlock's run. It's maybe no surprise maybe that that him going off maybe was maybe the difference between the two teams maybe in Thomas's. Maybe Thomas's might disagree on that, but if he was there fully flying fit, you just don't know what could have happened. I suppose the moment we'll all think about is that catch and control and pass for Gary Burke for the huge moment against Loughrea. Like, what a highlight reel play. Like, it's something that maybe a lot of people, we might have understood it in the county, but maybe people that mightn't have had the chance to watch the Galway club scene too much wouldn't have noticed Dahi, his ability when he's tasked with playing the ball. But huge player all year. He'd be, I think he was an absolute lock on everyone's team at midfield for what he brought to the table. I suppose Cathal Mannion, it's just, what a silky hurler. But I suppose one thing in terms of midfield this year, I suppose one point he'd be nearly operating as a sweeper at this point. If you said at the start of the year, I think I have it down here, I think Cathal Mannion scored 7 points this year, from play for Hascafona, should I say. So, like, if you said at the start of the year that Cathal was only going to score 7 points in play, we'd have said, like, Haskell will probably be gone at the groups.
Yeah.
And they're, are they going to avoid relegation? But it just completely changed role. He was sitting deep. He was kind of protecting. He was gathering ball from deep and delivering quality ball into, the likes of Mark Kelly, Pádraig, the brother, there's plenty more in that attack there. That they, just, I suppose, highlight from him, just talking about highlight reels, that belt of the ball for the Pádraig's goal against Crowell, like, outrageous, comes out, picks it up inside his own maybe 14-yard line and just delivers a monster long ball into the attack. And, Roll's right to a player, like, we're blessed to have these two lads hurling for Galway, at the minute. They're, sheer class, and, what a midfield combination they would be. I don't know if we'd actually see it, but there's calls for, Dahi to be, maybe if he was to be, come back fully fit, that he'd be thrown in midfield. And Stephen Cahill would be a nice foil there, let him roam around and pick up loose ball, and, he can hurt you from distance as well. But yeah, just some of the nominations then, like, Jesus, we as you said, we had 10. We could have had 20, I'd say. There was so many good quality midfielders this year. James Regan, very unlucky to miss out. David Burke, maybe as well. Probably James Regan, probably the better performer of the two this year. Ty Carron as well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ty Carron, very unlucky. Mellows, star player almost every year. Always capable of a score. I wouldn't have seen a whole pile of David Concannon, but you were massively impressed with him. Colin Flynn would have been one, maybe if Tommy Larkins went a bit further in the championship, he would have been in with a real shout, real tireless player out around midfield, live wire, kind of sat a bit deeper this year, allowing McHugh to kind of, sit in the pocket and sweep. I suppose one player we probably didn't get in, and I was just thinking of it, might have been Ian Fox. Just, I think, I think he scored 2-7 between the Sarsi's last two games. Like, incredible return, like, really stood up and when it was counted, like, and they might have been playing a bit more advanced for spells and stuff like that to pick off the 2-7, but, had a real contribution. And one lad, I suppose, maybe, again, like Colin Flynn, that maybe didn't go too far in the championship would have been Jason O'Gorman for Castlegar. I know Eamon Cleary, when he was on last week with us, he couldn't speak highly enough about him. He said he was causing them all kinds of problems, and he seemed to thrive under, Fergal Lynch and Castlegar system this year. But yeah, it's a fair midfield, but you could pick any other combination of two lads there, and you wouldn't be surprised either if they were to make it. But yeah, you have to be happy with those selections, I think.
Yeah, and just on the pair and like the possibility of seeing them in a maroon jersey. Geez, I definitely love to see it, because you've got obviously both kind of box to box players in many respects and have the ability to do that, and both played similar sort of roles in that, the onus isn't necessarily overly on the attacking side of the game for the two of them midfield this year. But if you were to see it move on to an inter-county setup, you have Dahi, I suppose, with the defensive side of things and the ability to surge forward, and then Cahill to play that slight bit more advanced, so that he would be a scorer, from that half hour line midfield sector. Do like days like Nolan Park last year, 6-7 points in play. Like he can do that from anywhere from his own 65 up. Like, so certainly it'll be a nice one to see, and two outstanding performers. And I suppose it's testament to the players themselves that it's not just they're here in this selection based on club form. It's not just county form, that because obviously there's no county form to go on, but they're both get into this team based on colossal years for their club, which is just as important for inter-county players when they go back to their clubs, that they do perform to that high quality level. And the two of them this year certainly did that for their sides, and instrumental in both having brilliant years, and definitely I know like had Dahi been fit for the county final and then even gotten injured midway through it or something like that, you would have at least got to see what he had to offer for a certain period of time. But we never got that opportunity. He never got that opportunity, more to the point, in the county final, which is hugely disappointing both for him personally and for the whole Turlough setup. So it did kind of detract in some ways from the spectacle of the county final. But I suppose he was nailed on in this team long before that county final, you know. So no qualms there for sure. Moving on then to the half hour line, we've 13 nominations here. So nominations are Kevin Cooney of Sarsfields, Conor Walsh, Turlockmore, Emmett Mahoney, Loughrea, Conor Cooney and Aina Burke, St Thomas's, Sean Lennon also of Turlockmore, Niall Burke, Ormore Mary, Jack Ford and Jack Hastings from Lee Mellows, Conor Whelan, Kinvara, David Glennon, Mulla, Aidan Hellerworth, Gort, and Brian Malloy, Kennedy, Malitram. Final three we went with Kevin Cooney of Sarsfields at right half forward, Conor Cooney from St Thomas's centre forward, and Sean Linehan, Turlockmore left half forward. Conor Cooney, Sean Linehan, two of the outstanding forwards of the year, David, and Kevin Cooney, two absolutely brilliant and developed into a real leader this year for Sarsfields.
For sure, and even at that, he was taken off the freeze at one point, Kevin Cooney, and you were like, you know, he had a couple, you know, there was the game against Cashel. He was removed from the freeze, and you're thinking, okay, this could go one or two ways now. His head might drop, or you know, he mightn't. You know, it mightn't be the same thing, because I think he missed a couple of relatively easy frees in front of the post. But I know the stream missed it, but I was there in person, and he managed to. He burst against Castle to turn it around. He managed to score one of the goals of the championship. The stream didn't pick it up. Now the poor cameraman was not up with the action at the time, and that was one of the first goals. And then he was there, and he roofed a 21-yard free as well, then to push Sarsfields through the knockouts and knock Castlegar out for a huge performance. But even before that, his performance for first class, you know, he kind of floated between the three lines: midfield, half forward line, and full forward. You know, between different spells, and it just shows his versatility as well. Like he's well capable of playing that role from deep. You know what I mean? Like picking up ball and delivering quality ball in. He's a class operator. You know, scored a number of sidelines as well this year that were just, you know, your draw and drop at the quality is the striking. You know, just a real, you know, outstanding contribution. Probably maybe some games maybe he kind of could go in and out of the play a little, but you know, when he was on form, and you know, fully deserving of the probably, I think, of his spot in the team. You touched on Conor Cooney and Sean Lennon, yeah. These two lads were certainties, absolute certainties in this team, I suppose. Sean Lennon probably did most of his work inside, but he was a player that you kind of just had to make room for him somewhere. We'll say, you know, the inside line was exceptionally strong when we get to it as well. Conor Cooney, captain of 3 in a row. Thomas is 3 in a row. You know what a leader he's turned into. He's matured as a hurler. Just out and out, you know, point scoring and goal scoring from him. Now he's, you know, he's working back the field. You know, he's doing you know, putting in the doing the dirty work. We'll say, you know, hooking, blocking, tackling. You know, you could find him back in his own full back line for phases of play. I suppose he got that huge goal in the county final, which was the difference in the end. And you know what he racked up. I know it was against Portumna. He racked up 9 points. I think it was, or was it 1-9 he scored that day from play? I'm not 100%. It was, you know, a crazy score. 2-14 from play altogether, and you know, just from a Galway standpoint, it's great to see him in this kind of form. I suppose maybe injuries over the past 2 years, you know, maybe, or like in previous years, maybe might have struggled him, but he was a player that seemed to, you know, enjoy being maybe away from the county, set up for a small period of time, you know, kind of let him focus on that thing, because it's hard enough to be captain of your club and then be gone training with Galway at the same point. I suppose one aspect of it might have been, you know, for freeze and confidence alone, maybe Dara Burke's, you know, injury at the start might have been, a small bit of a blessing in disguise for maybe Conor Cooney, because, you know, his confidence was up when he was nailing the freeze, and he learned. I think, you know, the one to draw level against Turlock was a massive free in particular. It was a difficult angle. I know it was close in, but you know, he didn't have a lot to work with there, and he nailed it, and that was the score that's, you know, that probably turned the tide for Thomas's in a way. A real leader, you know, class act. Brilliant to see. Just in terms of Sean Lennon, maybe, you know, arguably the standout forward in Galway this year. You know, what a contribution he had. You know, played most of the year, as I said, in the inside line. I think, what was it? He finished with 18 points in play. I think, you know, he was always chipping in with 3-4 points in play the whole way through. You know, outstanding player. You know, the whole. You know, I think he was probably, if Turlock could have fed him a bit more in the final, it would have caused Thomas even more problems. He just, you know, they probably couldn't get enough ball to him, really, you know, because he's strong, he's quick, you know, he can win it low, he can win it high, he's capable of winning these frees. he's not getting it. I suppose just examining the lads that missing, probably one lad that, you know, I probably feel it'd be very unlucky missing out, considering all he scored. He looked like nailed on. Maybe coming up into the semi-final and final would have been Éanna Burke. I think he scored 219 from play. I know 9 of that was against Portumla, but still, like, you know, he got the goal. I suppose in the semi-final would have been his contribution, but maybe he had a bit of maybe he didn't have his best days, you know, against Cappy and Turlock in the final. And looking at it there, you touched on Whelan, Dean Higgins, maybe Jack Ford, you know, Jack Hastings. I know Chunky's a huge fan of his as well, you know what I mean? Like, just another player that's, I think he was training with Galway recently as well, you know. He'd add, you know, a completely different dynamic to the attack. But Conor Walsh as well, maybe he had the first game against Lee Mellows, first time out, you'd be thinking this lad is going to have the years here. Maybe, you know, I think a few of the lads might have said it last week, maybe score some play, dried up a small bit, and maybe that's why he didn't. But, you know, he had a fine year as well and razor sharp in the freeze. But three cracking players in that line there again, and, you know, I know there's some difficult choices, lads that have missed out, you know, Davy Glennon maybe another one, you know, but what a trio in itself, Patrick, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not easy to make these selections, because, you know, you have such talent on show here. Like, it's insane the quality, the pool of talent of players that are performing at such a high level. Like, you know, like so Sean Lennon, in terms of a Galway setup, we haven't seen him in that sector of the field. You know, got a nice bit of game time midfield and that, but certainly a lad who's probably had enough experience maybe from previous campaigns, that he is a lad who's definitely in the fold for game time when Championship gets going in a couple of weeks' time. But me personally, if he is selection, I hope it's in this sector of the field, in the half-forward line, full forward line, and see can he translate his club form into the county setup, because if he can, what an option he's going to be for Galway, like, you know. And the other two guys, Kevin Cooney, I can remember, you know, against Ardrahan, watching that game on the stream, and every time he got the ball and he ran at Ardrahan, it was just absolute chaos. And whenever he did it, a goal happened. You know, it's just a lad, when he gets up ahead of his team, he's near impossible to stop. Definitely impossible to stop legally anyhow, you know. And Conor Cooney, what a year he's had. Probably his best year really since 2017, since the All Ireland winning campaign with Galway, you know. Probably struggled a small bit, both with the club and the county since, you know. But definitely this year, and I suppose released from the shackles of full forward, he's been really outstanding, and not always as a scorer, you know, which is what I suppose what he'd have made his name as, you know, and that we know how good a striker he is. But in the county final, he didn't win man of the match because of his scores. Really, against Turlock, he got the goal from play, obviously. And he was absolutely colossal out in the wars and out in the middle third, and winning dirty ball and offloading and delivering ball inside. I thought he really stood up and played a captain's role there for Thomas's. You know, something that you mightn't have thought was in his game, you know, necessarily when playing for Galway, and that. And I suppose it's a different game too, and that there is a lot less of those sort of ruck scenarios and that, you know. But no, really impressive, and a real leader for St. Thomas's. So no, look, I think we've a strong half-forward line pick there. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people. I suppose Kevin Cooney's position probably won't be the one most up for grabs there, and there's a lot of names that were in right in contention there, but he's the third lad we went for there in the half-forward line, and yeah, no, certainly a strong one, that's for sure. Moving on then to the inside line, we have nominees here, 13 nominees here as well. So we went with was from Lochray. Nominations are Jamie Ryan, Martin McManus, St. Thomas's Oisin Flannery and Dara Burke, Barry Cannon, Turlock Moore, Oisin Connolly, Castlegar, Pádraig Mannion, Haskell Fohana, Jam Mannion, Capitagal, and Alan Dolan as well, I should say, Capitagal, Conor Hannafy, Ormore Mary, Jamie Ryan, Craughwell, and Brian Burke, Clammer Daly. And just then to reveal the selection we made, we went to Oisin Flannery from St. Thomas's, Pádraig Mannion of Haskell Fohana at full forward, and Jam Mannion, Capitagal, top of the left. pacey full forward, and that's for sure, and with plenty of class in either corner, and then obviously Pádraig full forward. Certainly not a position we would have seen him win a club all-star in or a place in our team at the start of the year, but the way things transpired with Ascafona, he was the key cog in their attack, both from the half forward and from full forward. Had an outstanding year, and the two boys either side of him, two young up and coming talents. Ja probably on the scene a lot longer than Oisin Flannery, who's only just finished only after getting his leaving cert results. Which is a scary prospect. And what a talent, and played most semi-final and the final with a dodgy hamstring, as we know, but was pretty key in St. Thomas's winning both of those games. Really, probably wouldn't have, fair to say, they wouldn't have won either game without him. And obviously Ja as well. We saw how good he was man of the match in their quarter-final win over Ascafona, and damn near man of the match in the county semi-final too against Thomas. He was outstanding that day as well, David. A lad who's been consistently excellent for Cap Tiger the last couple of years, and got his first bit of game time for the Galway Seniors at the start of the year. You'll be hoping maybe next spring again. Now you'll see a lot more of him in a maroon jersey.
Oh, for sure. His pace is frightening. Like, it's just, when he gets the ball in his hand, like, there's going to be little to no cornerbacks in the country that'll be able for him. So it's just a matter about, good dry day might suit him as well if he was playing for Galway. Yeah. You know what I mean? I know sometimes he gets the runs out in maybe Walsh Cup and, early stages in the league when the weather isn't the best. Like, you'd love to see him in the hard sod, like, Summer's Day in, at Thurles or, a Nolan Park or, at Crow Park even, so, but yeah, just what another year, just no more than Declan Cronin the far end, like, for, his Capital teammate. They've been just over consistent, the last 2 years, I think Ja probably started the campaign maybe a little slow in his own eyes, like, you were thinking, is he going to have the same impact as last year? But then, quarter-final, semi-final stages come, he's in Kenny Park again. He just seems to come alive in Kenny Park. I think his 8 points between the quarter-final and semi-finals he scored from play, like, and he gave Keane Mahoney with actually a good game on him, the run around for Thomas's, like, for some stages. And, he's a frightening prospect. It's just a matter of maybe, getting maybe a consistent run and maybe, having the confidence in himself to go on now and say that he can go on to the next level, because Jesus, we've seen it over the last couple of years. The ability is there anyway, and the physical attributes have had the pace and and a bit of power behind him as well. What a player! And just in the other corner, then speaking of what a player, like what a prospect this lad. He's a frightening prospect at the moment, Oisin Flannery. He's come in and he's one of the leaders in this Thomas's attack already. As you said, just after doing his leaving cert, he's going to be probably, I'd be nailed on for a Galway under-20 start this year, I'd imagine, you know what I mean? Like, so he's, I think 213, I think I was just kind of looking over a list. I think he scored from play over the course of the campaign. Like, it's a frightening scoreline. I think he scored in every game. He was just ultra, consistency was just never like, and 2 games I was probably worried about him would have been, like, say, might have been when he was in full forward against Capitag in the semi-final, and there's James Garvey on him. And then in the final, he was on Ronan Burke. And there'd be 2 players that would be looking to bully him physically. But Jesus, I think Chunky touched on it. He's very shrewd in the way he uses his body, and how he gathers possession, and how he shields it. And like, I think he got a huge score against Turlock where Ronan Burke was down on the sideline, and he probably should have dealt with it. Flannery came in and he outmuscled him and turned over possession and got a pint out of it. It's just another, and this is from a young fella that was maybe, as we could quite clearly see, should I say, was struggling with a hamstring injury, in the latter stages of the competition. Incredible player. I'm just looking forward to really seeing him now over the next few years, and hopefully he can kind of develop and build from here. But fully deserving. Himself and Conor Cooney were probably the leaders in that Thomas's attack this year more than anyone else. They delivered most consistently, and that's probably why they're on the team. Pádraig Mannion, what more can you say about him? Another inspired Kevin Ward's adjustment here. Like, you touched on it already, where he can work between the 2 lines, and even he came out to midfield for some spells, of the campaign as well. One of these runs. What did he finish with? I think 212 from play and some huge scores. Down the home stretch. He bagged a goal against Mullia, bagged a goal against Crowell. Yeah, these huge late goals. When you needed a leader to stand up, he was there. he was counted. You know, we could have picked him on maybe, you know, any of those 3 lines of the field, but, you know, it was probably full forward where he did his best work overall, and, you know, where he made his biggest contribution. But again, just some of the lads to miss out. You know, you're looking at your Jamie Ryans, your Martin McManus. I know we'll probably hear back about this, that there's no Loughrea player on it, but, you know, in one sense, it was probably Loughrea were a team where it was 15 lads that really kind of came to the fore every day. That, you know, there was different lads standing up for them. You know, when one lad was absent, maybe say Jamie Ryan was suspended. Like, probably Jamie Ryan probably could have been on it without the suspension if he didn't get, you know, pick up that red card that day. You know, you'd never know. He was probably the most likely, maybe with a Johnny Cohen, maybe, or you know, Martin McManus had an outstanding game there in the quarter final. I think he was first class, but maybe he was quite enough then in the semi-finals. We'll say the plenty, you know, the plenty other lads, but just going through it. Barry Cannon had a fine campaign. Conor Hennessy, you mentioned Oisin Conley. Maybe if we went a bit further, you know, another exceptional prospect there. You know, I've seen him recently. Cigar under 21s. They were playing Athenry, and he was outstanding again. He's a frightening player. You know, Brian Burke was another one you mentioned. You know, just God, we were blessed with, you know, Dara Burke was another one as well. Maybe didn't rack up the huge tallies he did in previous years, but worked as hard as ever. I think Chunky was one who kind of opened her eyes for one game there against Clymer Daly, where he worked like a dog. He countless turnovers. You know what Dara Burke is going to bring to the table, even if he's not scoring. He's going to get a hand in, or, you know, a hurl in, or he's going to turn it over. But yeah, no, fine line in the field again. You know, geez, if you're picking this 15 in the morning to go out, even represent Galway, you wouldn't have a bad team here.
For sure, yeah, for sure. Not an awful lot of talent here again, no more than every other line. Touched on Loughrea, and obviously no one making the final 15, and I suppose that was something on our minds, definitely. You know, when we were making the selection, we were Johnny Cohen and Jamie Ryan were probably the two that were in contention. The main ones in contention to get a spot in the team, and probably Jamie Ryan's suspension was what went against him, and that, you know, suspended after only or sent off after a couple of minutes against TNI, so missed that game and missed all the next game. You know, had a decent game the first day out, was outstanding against Cappy, then the second day, and very good, and against Turlough comes semi-final as well. So that form, had he brought that in those other 2 games, he'd definitely have been on the starting team. But another fella who's going to get time in the Galway setup in the next year or so, and has probably is of the age again, no more than the likes of Declan Cronin and Stephen Barrett, where you want to start making a name for yourself outside your club and in a maroon and white jersey. So certainly we'd all be hoping to see that from him in the next year or so, you know. But yeah, no, look, a difficult team to pick. An awful lot of quality performers, as we alluded to there. But I suppose just give a rundown then on the final 15 again. We'd Kieran Dolan from Sarsfields in goals. Full back line of Declan Cronin from Captagal, Fintan Burke, St Thomas's, and Stephen Barrett, Lee Mellows. Half back line of Daniel Loftus, Turlough, Shane Cooney, St Thomas's, and Kevin Hussey, Turlough. Midfield, Dahi Burke, Turlough, and Cahan Mannion at Haskell. Half forward line of Kevin Cooney from Sarsfields, Conor Cooney, St Thomas's, and Sean Leland, Turlough. And a full forward line of Oisin Flannery, St Thomas's, Pádraig Mannion at Haskell, and Jan Mannion, Captagal. So the breakdown of clubs from that team is St Thomas's and Turlough, both with 4 each. 2 players apiece for Cappy, Sarsfields, and Haskell, and 1 player from Lee Mellows. And then just briefly of the nominees, 65 nominees in all for 15 positions. St Thomas had 10 nominations, Turlough 9, Lee Mellows and Loughrea 5, which I suppose shows what we're saying, and that Loughrea had an awful lot of really good performers, just none quite got into our team, but certainly your team at home, you might include 1 or 2 Loughrea lads, and we certainly wouldn't be judging you off the back of that. An awful lot of top class performers there. Captagal, Clonmerdaley, Castlegar, and Sarsfields. 3 apiece for Askfohana and Tommy Larkins. 2 for Oranmore Mary, Ardrahan, Gort, and Mulya, and 1 for Beha, Cropwell, Kinvara, Clarnbridge, Ballinderreen, and Kilnadeem Leitrim. So final thoughts on that team, David. A lot of lads established in the Galway setup at this stage. A lot of lads maybe that have served their clubs for huge periods and probably getting a bit of what's the word, I suppose getting a bit of praise for their performance this year. The likes of Kieran Dolan and goals, and ever present in that Sarsfield setup for years now, and a lot of up and coming talent as well. So a nice balance certainly in the final 15 we went with.
Oh, that's for sure. There's plenty of youth there, but as the saying is, it's becoming fastly becoming a real young man's game, isn't it? Really, like there's not. Is there anyone there 30 or over? You know what I mean? Like it's it's not. I think those days are kind of gone. You're in your peak now in especially maybe club hurling maybe at 25, 26, 27. Those kind of years, but you touched on it there. Like there's probably lads there now that are looking to maybe make the breakthrough next year. And while it mightn't be this year, like it might be a whole lot of experimentation this year. From a Galway standpoint, because they kind of have to hit the ground running against Wexford. You've touched on it already. We've touched on them like your Declan Cronin's, your Stephen Barrett's, there's plenty more there. That even someone like Daniel Loftus or Jan Mannion, that can maybe break through in the next couple of years now, and put a good run together, maybe in a Walsh Cup, and like hold on to their spot for the league. And you'd never know, like, because Galway needs these players coming through all the time. We need to keep the pressure on, because that was a complaint there we had for a while, where we're just kind of using the same 18, 19, 20 players. There wasn't a whole lot of others, but the more lads that are showing great form in during the clubs, the better. And it's been something that Shane O'Neill has always said, like the lads that are playing well for the clubs will be in the Galway squads and probably likely to be selected. So I'm very interested to see what his team will be first time out against Wexford. Now it's going to be very interesting to see which lads have made the breakthrough. Like it wouldn't surprise me at all to see someone like say Finta Burke down to start, or Shane Cooney, or your Kevin Hussey maybe, or even Sean Linnen. You touched on it already, Sean Linnen. What a player to have there in attack. He'd be someone that I'd be definitely looking to maybe give a run, in the corner forward, and start him and just see how he gets on, because physically he's a powerhouse in there. He won't be overawed by the intercounty conditioning, we'll say, from some lads, at all. So it's a fine team. I'm sure that, as we touched on, probably the Loughrea thing will probably maybe rackle with a few people, but like at the end of the day, we try to pick our best 15 players. To us, these were our best 15, and Chunky kind of agreed as well. I know he was throwing out 100 names there for a pint, and I probably was hitting you with a lot of names too. But at the end of the day, this is the general consensus, and I suppose we have to take our medicine if anyone comes back on top of us.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, it's a subjective thing. We all have our own opinions, and no one's necessarily right or wrong. It's just what we decided in the end as our final 15. I suppose when there was so many names being thrown out, and you're being reminded of so many performers, because it's hard to think back and remember absolutely everyone that played so well this year. I suppose then earlier on today, in the end we decided we'd have a go and pick a senior B team of the year as well, and I suppose remember and I suppose give a bit of praise to a lot of lads who probably, I suppose, a lot of people wouldn't have seen them first and foremost, because there was less games in senior B streamed, so we're probably a bit ahead of the pack in that regard, David, and haven't seen a lot of these lads more than most, so certainly very lucky from that perspective. But a lot of lads, in relegation as well, ourselves, Kennedy and Leitrim, Kinvara, all represented in our final team here, those games just as important as any other championship game for those three clubs, they all came into it. So look, with that, I'll run through the team quickly, and we'll go down through it then, and just give our thoughts on a few positions and a few lads. In goal, we have our own goalie, Stephen Divney. He'll be delighted with that. He was harshly overlooked for player of the tournament in the Kilmacud Sevens a couple of years back when we won the All-Ireland. Kevin Geehan won out on that occasion, and it's rankled with him ever since. So this might soften the blow from a small bit. He's in goals. Full back line of Declan Connolly, Clammerdaly, Stephen Kelly, Askervona, and Pierce McCran are Drahan. Half back line, Sean Hardiman, Mullia, Jack Fitzpatrick, Clammerdaly, and Greg Lally of Gort. Midfield, David Concannon, Clammerdaly, Ryland, Ballandarian. Half forward line, David Glennon, Mullia, Brian Burke, Clammerdaly, and Aidan Hellebert, Gort. Full forward line then, Brian Malloy, Kennedy, Leitrim, Conor Whelan, Kinvara, and Jamie Ryan from Cropwell. So we have 4 Clammerdaly, 2 each from Gort and Mulla, and then one representative from 7 other clubs. So we've got 10 clubs represented in the Senior B Team of the Year, which certainly balanced in fairness to us. So one each for Crockwell, Kinvara, Beha, Ballinderreen, Askfohan, Kinnerdee, Leitrim, and Ardrahan. And just quickly run through a few notable omissions, because, as we mentioned, there was a lot of quality performers in Senior B this year as well. So from Ardrahan, the likes of Kieran Callan, Ross Albertini, Keenan Fahy, Shane Larkin, Niall Cohen, Robbie Lan, all Ballinderreen, Jack Grealish, Richie Cummins from Gort, Mark Horn, Dean Callan and Adrian Prendergast from Crowell, Cahill Durban and Ronan Glennon from Mulla, Mark Kelly, Ronan Kelly, Sean Blaheen, Askell, and just a flavour of some of the other lads who really hurled well for their clubs this year. But as regards to the final team, David, again, a lot of agreement between us in that 12 or 13 positions. We were I suppose unanimous in our selections, and in the end we decided to omit Cahill and Pádraig Mannion from the team, and that they were already selected on the overall team of the year. So obviously would take their place on the Senior B Team of the Year, but we said we'd let a couple of our lads have the honour of be getting their name in the inaugural Tribe Talk Senior B Hurling Team of the Year. So I'm sure they'll all be.
Have you organised the awards, or have you paid for them yet?
Sure, with COVID now, we can't get organise a big do or anything now. But yeah, we might have a big Zoom call there one of the evenings or something.
But just on the team as a whole, like as you said there, like there's plenty notable omissions as well. Like the lads that could have easily made it as well. I suppose we're blessed in one sense ourselves. Between the two of us, we probably never seen as much hurling this year, because we were able to get to more games more than anyone, and there was the streaming as well of the ones that we did happen to miss. So yeah, just on the team, I think it's very strong. I think there's probably a few lads that probably would be regarded a bit unlucky to miss out, but overall, I would say it's probably one of the strongest teams. You could assemble between everything. Just defensively, like Declan Connolly, Stephen Kelly, Pierce McCran. Like that's a fine full back line there, and just on Pierce McCran, like we saw how good a hurler he was when he was switched to centre forward against Sarsfields, and I think he nabbed 3 points off Joseph Cooney as well. Like that just showed the quality there. I think we touched on we've mentioned that Stephen Kelly, his performances all year, like what he brings to the Haskell-Forna lineup. Like he just the whole way through. He when a player needs to be shackled, he'll be probably more than likely the man to do it. Like there's probably a few other lads that didn't make notable omission, should I say? Like even someone like Lawrence Tully there as well, who had a fine year. He wouldn't be out of place in this company either. Declan Connolly is one of the best defenders in Galway. Similar to Declan Cronin, he's a real kind of specialist cornerback. You're not going to get too much soft off him anytime. The half back line, Sean Hardiman from Mulla, maybe if he didn't pick up that nasty injury a few years ago, he could be knocking around the Galway setup now. I'm not sure even if he is at the moment. Jack Fitzpatrick, really good campaign as well. Maybe had his best performance when he went to midfield against Mulla. Kind of shackled Davy Glennon well. He's a dominant presence. He's a huge physical specimen of a man. And Greg Lally, I think we mentioned already, when he takes Gart's take, his distribution is one of the best in the county. His delivery into that attack is just probably second to none, really. He's a huge experience there, and maybe if they had Aidan Hart the whole way through, they probably could have, they probably would have stuck up to Senior A and maybe gotten over the line against Lee Melhus as well. They had a fine year. David Kincannon, Ryan in midfield, probably two different players. Lan is maybe heavy duty scorer from midfield, racked up a blast of goals from play this year. I think, Jesus, every time I looked at the score, I seen him maybe once or twice, and I rattled the net both days. And David Kincannon is a different kind of player. I wouldn't have seen a whole pile of him, but he's a player you would have been mightily impressed with as well. It gets through Trojan work out there around midfield. Might always have the 1-2, 1-3, 1-4 after his name. But he's absolutely pivotal to Clymer Daly. David Glennon from Mulla, we know now he's gone off to Westmeath, so it'll be interesting to see how he does there. But he looked absolutely unplayable. I only seen him once this year. Looked absolutely unplayable in the first half against Haskra. He's just they couldn't deal with him whatsoever. Looked every inch of an inter-county player, and We've seen, he's been knocking around there, and that's probably what you'd expect. Brian Burke, what do you get out of him? Never always heavy duty scoring, huge tallies after his name every week, be it from frees or from play. He can hurt you from all over. He'd probably be disappointed with his performance against Thomas's in the knockouts. We would expect him more, but again, he was up against, probably my player. I said it already, my player of the championship, Fintan Burke, this year. So, you're not going to get anything easy there. Aidan Hellebert, what can you say? Maybe that the free probably would be one that will stand, will be one that'll, come back and haunt him a small bit. But Gart wouldn't have been back in the position to, to come overcome Lee Mellows without his contribution. He seems to have kind of put up his performance to another few levels this year. Not even in the scoring stakes, his work rate and everything. And, I think you mentioned it before, he's kind of the glue there in attack. He makes them tick, whether it's a hand pass or, whatever it is, he's always there. Brian Malloy, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't have seen him, but you'd have been mightily impressed with him all year. So I probably won't. I might get you to touch on that, maybe. Conor Whelan, oh my God, the games I've seen him, he's one man wrecking machine there in attack. Kinvara wouldn't be senior without him, and if anything was to happen with him, you'd worry. We don't know what the crack is with relegation between Kilnadeem and Leitrim or Kinvara, but I'm assuming it's going to be played. And finally, Jamie Ryan from Crowell. What a player he's been. He's been seriously underrated. Over I'd say the last decade in Galway. Every year he's absolute goal machine. I think he. Every year you'd see a game where he racks up maybe 2 or 3 goals. And it's so consistent in the scoring stakes there. There's other lads maybe like Adrian Prendergast or Niall Healy or Tom Monaghan that might gather the headlines a bit more sometimes. But Jamie Ryan, when he's on song, he's a different type of attacker to the rest of the boys as well. He's a batterer. I mean, there he's nearly put Jack Grealish into the stand one point there when one of the games we saw. But yeah, a serious team. I'm sure there's probably plenty of other lads there that are, inches away from selection, but this is what we win with, and we probably should add as well. We win Renegade without Chunky for this one. We didn't ask for his contributions, or we'd have a list of 200 people. So Chunky can't be blamed for any of these selections in the senior B team, I'm afraid. So we'll have to let him off with that one. But yeah, you any final thoughts on that, Patrick? What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I suppose probably looking at the half-back line of North, but I suppose that we went with 3 out-and-out centre-backs in many respects, Sean Hardiman, Jack Fitzpatrick and Greg Lely, but all established in that position for a number of years and for their respective clubs, I suppose it just goes to show the importance of having a quality and a commanding centre-back and the influence they can have. And that was really noticeable, those 3 lads. You think of the 3 of them, you think of how strong they are, both physically and in the air. And then when they do have ball, all very clever and utilising possession and well able to take a score as well. All three score from play. I'm fairly sure in the campaign. So Declan Connolly in behind, really impressive all year. Probably one of the best years he's had in an awful long time. I remember seeing him for hurling for NUIG only a year or 2 ago in Fitzgibbon. He was minor back in 2011. So he'd be 27 this year now as well. But going back playing Fitzgibbon there last year, the year before, was outstanding there and a key component in that NUIG setup. Pierce McCann, really impressive man marker for Ardrahan this year. Every day they went out in the group, he took on Brian Concannon, we'll say, against Clonardale, took on Joe Gantley against us, and then was able to turn it around and go up centre forward the next week, and give Just Cooney plenty of it in the first half, especially against Sarsfield, was really impressive. A lad who's was part of that crop of Ardrahan young players that kind of came through and were all, I suppose, they're established in that Ardrahan team for 5 or 6 years now, and even though they're only 23 or 4, they all kind of came, make up the backbone of that Ardrahan team, and I suppose an Ardrahan team that's only going one way, and that's up at the minute, in fairness. Midfield, Rylan, we both saw him against Crop in the stadium, scored a hat-trick that and I know you would have seen him in the other 2 group games as well, and lad, you were certainly really impressed with, and a player capable of playing anywhere from midfield up, really, and has done for Ballinderring. If they're struggling for a score inside, he's that's pushed up there in search of goals, and he came up with them too. In fairness to him, both from the full forward line and from midfield. David Concannon, brilliant against Thomas's. I think it was 1-2 he finished with that day. Was outstanding in the second half. Always does chip in with a score or two, but he's worth an awful lot more than that Declan Daly, and that, you know, he's covers an acre of ground, and great man to carry ball, or just great decision maker. I think on the ball, you know, wins the right pop a pass or deliver inside to the boys, and obviously his understanding with his brother Brian in attack is worth an awful lot to them as well. Brian Burke, lad, I saw plenty of him and felt the wrath of him in the group as well. He went to town against us in fairness. I think it's six points from play he finished with. He was the reason. He was the reason that they beat us so comfortably in the end. In fairness, you know, we just couldn't get a handle on him at all. You know, he's relatively quick and intelligent in his movement, and that, you know, the timing of his runs and the bursts he make, you know, it's just awful hard to get a handle on him. And obviously, as we know, he's so good in the air and so quick in his striking. You know, just a nightmare to defend against, in fairness. Hellebuert, yeah, I mentioned a couple of times about him over the course of the year, and that just, again, no more than Brian Burke, just his hurling IQ is just second to none. You know, his timing he's always just off your shoulder in space, there to take a handy pass and pop the ball over there, and there's no fluke about that. Like, it's a skill in itself, you know, and it might look very simple to someone in the stand or to us above in the press box, but there's nothing easy about it. It's certainly nothing easy about it if you're the man trying to stop him, that's for sure. And he was brilliant again this year. And obviously, Davey, I wouldn't have seen Davey live this year. I saw him in a couple of games stream, but as you mentioned that day against Asker in the first half, he was absolutely brilliant, and it's one of the most consistent club hurlers in Galway for a decade, like, you know, and just we've never seen him translate that form into a Galway setup, like, you know, and we certainly wish him all the best heading out over to Westmeath, and they'll certainly be hoping that he can bring that club form into the Westmeath setup. I know they've like Niall O'Brien is back as well. From he was travelling for a couple of years for them as well. So if you get the two of them, throw them into your attack, they'll be worth an awful lot to them going forward. The inside line, yeah, I know you mentioned you didn't see Ryan Malloy, but certainly I saw him, plenty of them against us the first relegation game, centre forward, and he was awarded with Mikey Lynch as well, the corner forward. He was absolutely brilliant, both from play and from frees. You know, we know his striking ability. He's had game time for the Galway seniors in the past, and at underage especially, he's been really, really good. Just an all round classy forward, to be fair, and Conor Whelan, don't need to say a whole pile about him. You know, we know what he brings, and, you know, his scores from play, like, you know, in the county final they released a list of the top scorers from play in Senior A and overall, and in the Senior B Championship, and he wasn't actually on the list. But you know what he scored from play, and then, but if you take into account the amount of frees he scored that he won himself, if you include them, he's well up on the list. Like, you know, it's just because if you're a defender and he has the ball, just the easy thing to do is just put him on the ground, because, you know, there might be half a chance he might miss a free here and there, but certainly if he's running at you and you don't take him down, the ball's only going one place, and it's not a happy outcome for your team, you know. And finally, then Jamie Ryan, yeah, you know, I feel like you think 9 years ago he's an under 21 All Ireland winning goalie for Galway, and never has for Crofwell, like, really, you know. Obviously had Aidan Ryan there for best part of 15 or 20 years in goal for Crofwell, like, you know, and now Darragh Gilligan's there as well, you know. So I suppose there was probably a degree of taking your medicine when you're breaking onto the scene as an All Ireland winning goalie, and you can't get past, you know, the likes of Aidan Ryan in goal, and, you know, got himself into excellent shape, and, you know, physically he's so strong, and when he gets going at you, you know, it's just impossible to enter with him, no more than the likes of Brian Burke, you know. But has the finishing ability to go with it, and as you mentioned, a great man to get a goal. So yeah, no, we certainly have a lot of different clubs represented, which I suppose shows the importance of having one or two key players for those Senior B teams. You know, the lads we mentioned there. When you look at those Senior B teams at the start of the year, they're the lads as each club's standout players, and they duly delivered for their clubs this year. So no, I think only right to I suppose give them the bit of credit they deserve for outstanding years for their clubs. And two quality teams there, that's for sure, and lads who you'd expect to deliver performances of the same caliber moving on over the next couple of years anyhow,
Absolutely. And so I have picked my player of the year there now. Are you going to? Do you want to give it a rattle? Do you want to see who you can come up with?
Yeah. No. To be honest, looking at it, I'm under pressure now. I'm on the spot, but
I should have told you beforehand.
No, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Conor Cooney is my player of the year, to be honest now, yeah.
That's fair.
Just on as a scorer, as a leader, as an overall contributor, I thought he was so important to that St. Thomas's cause this year, more important than he has been over the last number of years, and that in what he produced, obviously the first day out they go out there, Mr. Darragh Burke, and he's the one that pops up with the late goal to beat Castlegar, and continued on his scoring exploits from there, and probably county semi-final, missed a couple of frees, I know, but still played such a huge role from play. And I think the switch of him and Darragh, I know as the campaign went on, Darragh moved out to the half Ireland as well, but at the start for I suppose for a lot of the group stage and for the Clonmara Daily game, you had Darragh at full forward and Conor centre forward, sort of for both players, and Conor especially being out centre forward, I think it made such a difference to him this year. And the free taking, as you mentioned, I think it was huge in that having that responsibility, and I think he thrives under it, and it helps his overall game. Like, you think back to Joe Canning's 2010, the 2010 campaign, and before, it's like when Farrar was on the freeze, and Canning's form probably suffered a small bit as a result. 2010 certainly wasn't his most memorable campaign in some championship games, but then when the responsibility came back his way, went on to have arguably his best year in 2012, and wasn't recognised as Hurley of the year that year. But you just remember some of his performances full forward, players thrive under that responsibility. I think Conor Cooney is definitely one of them, and I'm certainly excited to see him in a maroon and white jersey over the next couple of weeks. Hoping all these players can translate that for him, because to be honest, coming up against Wexford, and we're not going to talk about it today, we'll talk about it in a couple of weeks' time, they're all going to need it. But look, I suppose that's the end of the club campaign for 2020, although we're hopeful that we'll have an intermediate county final to discuss, to preview and to review, and to pick our team of the year at some stage for intermediate. We can't predict anything for the time being, David, but brilliant season, once it did get going, all hard to believe. Not that long ago since we were previewing the entire championship there towards the end of July, but here we are now, the middle of October, and the whole thing is wrapped up, and we're attention quickly turns to inter-county. But has been a great year. Really enjoyed discussing everything with yourself and Chunky and the rest of the lads throughout the year, and certainly all is looking good in Galway hurling, that's for sure.
No, you said it. Yeah, no, it's been great. Yeah, it's been a great championship. We've touched on it so many times already. It's been one of the best, and the streaming as well has been fantastic. It let us probably do this. Before, if we tried to do this podcast, it might have been a bit more difficult. But now we can catch games on Mondays and Tuesdays and have a look back at them, and you can really offer your thoughts on the games you actually have seen. Sometimes you mightn't get to them all, but here or there. But yeah, no, it's been a very enjoyable experience on this podcast. Now we'll see what the inter-county takes us, or what kind of segment we can go with, or what kind of format we plan on doing. It mightn't last that long, or it could last quite a while yet. But if any thoughts or anything like that, feel free to get in contact with us. We'd be only delighted to see what we could implement. We'd love to get more, ex-Galway players, or even, club players or well-known faces from around the Galway scene on for a chat. It's always great. We love getting, that seems to be the best part of it, really, a lot of it. So people can get sick of hearing our voices, but it's great to hear a bit of a fresh perspective from a few lads coming on. So yeah, enjoyable, and hopefully we'll be back next year for the club championship at this point anyway. So, fingers crossed it gets off the ground and everything, and we'll just get the inter-county out of the way and we have a clean run at it maybe next autumn, because I don't know if they're going to persist with the 2 months April club championship next year. I don't see that being a runner down, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
They'll probably likely play a league, probably play league games around then. So it's probably for the best. And as a club player, you'd probably be delighted with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the way forward for everybody. And I think there wouldn't be the same pressure on clubs to have lads in tip top shape come April. If you lose your first couple of league games because you're not 100% fit, I think we'll all get over that, But no, certainly I think it's the best way forward, and something that they'll be planning over the winter months, because we say there'll be nothing else to be at, but there's an inter-county championship to go yet. So look, we'll leave it there for now, David. We'll be back in the coming weeks with all things inter-county. We'll plenty of us, and I don't know, will we have a goal picking our own Galway team for the first day against Wexford? It mightn't be too accurate, but we might definitely give it a go. But thanks a million to all the viewers and listeners over the last couple of months. It's as David mentioned, been an eye-opening experience for us, and playing to the camera and bringing our thoughts and analysis to all the club scene to you all. So thank you very much for your positive feedback, and we really appreciate that. And hopefully things can continue to grow for ourselves in the podcast and for all things Galway hurling over the coming months. So with that, we'll leave it there and we'll be in touch soon. So all the best.